Okay, today we're talking about three topics. One, we're going to talk about a question I get all the time. How do I promote my podcast? Number two, we're going to talk about a book I recommend. And number three, a person that I want you to know about. I'm going to be interviewed today by Chad. So I'll tell you more about him in a second. So stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show, and you know every week we have smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies, and we've had Netflix, Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation, Blizzard, lots of great episodes for you to check out in the archives. And of course, this episode is brought to you by our company Rise25, where we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We are the easy button for any company to launch and run a podcast. And we do three things: strategy, accountability, and full execution. So if you want to learn more about it, go to our website, our recently revamped website, which has lots of great content on there for you, rise25.com. And we're happy to help. Or you can email us at support@rise25.com. All right. And I will turn it over to you, Chad, and take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Sean. Great to be here. Great to talk to you, as always. Hey, you kind of mentioned what we're going to be talking about today, so let's get right started. A recent podcast that you've listened to and that you might recommend.
Yeah, I've been listening to this one a lot lately. So it's called Lenny's Podcast. I don't even know what his last name is, but Lenny's his name. It's getting a lot of attention. He is a guy who has a background in product management. So he works with product managers, which sounds like, I know you're thinking, what a sexy topic. But it deals a lot with technology and the ways that companies are innovating themselves. Like recently, he had on a woman who's like head of growth for Lovable, which been around for less than a year and went from like zero to I think 200 million in revenue in about a year's time. So absolutely insane. And so he has conversations like that. He had another person on that was doing some really interesting stuff with vibe coding and Lovable. And so it's really kind of on the cutting edge of the way that companies are, especially technology companies, but even non-technology companies are innovating with these new technology, this new AI that's affecting every aspect of business. So definitely check out Lenny's podcast.
Okay, sounds good. A tool that you've used recently. I know everybody kind of has their favorite AI tool.
Yes,
You've used one recently.
I mentioned ChatGPT before. I thought we'd talk about the differences between the different tools. So I really like Claude for certain uses. It's great for, of course, coding. It's got a great coding application called Claude Code. They just released something called Claude Cowork, which is kind of like bringing Claude Code to the masses. But it's really good for writing. So it writes really robust content. So if I want to make sure that a topic is covered very thoroughly, then sometimes I will outline something in ChatGPT, take that and then paste it into Claude and ask Claude to write an article on it or write a structure or even more thorough article. And so it can do a really good, thorough job of that. So I like Claude for writing. I like it for coding. I like Gemini I haven't used Gemini enough, but a lot of people are saying that it's improved dramatically. So I use it for image generation. I use it to just cross-check when I'll run a search sometimes on ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and Gemini and see what the different responses are. And then Perplexity I really like for up-to-date information and research. So if I'm going to do research on something that's happening in the news right now, or I want something the most topical, then I'll use Perplexity. I really like how it identifies the sources. So in the early days when it was more of a challenge with different LLMs and frontier labs hallucinating, Perplexity gave me kind of more confidence because it had the sourcing right there, and you can click through and you can look at the source that something, an answer came from. So that's really good. So let's see, did I cover them all? So ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and Perplexity. And ChatGPT is kind of my all around. I've got a bunch of projects built in there, and so I use those different projects for different purposes. and I create projects that are like coaches in different areas. So I have one for, you know, like around health related things. I have one related to, finances. I have one related to marketing. I have one related to various different areas of your life. You know, if you want to have a better relationship with your spouse, you could create one in there, and you can have it source information from the best relationship coaches in the world, advisors in the world, authors in the world. And so that I find it really powerful for that. So I have a lot of projects that are built in ChatGPT that I use in that sense. So ChatGPT is kind of my daily driver.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very nice. So when you say Claude is best for writing, is that stylistically or more thorough research and then written, or what do you mean by best for writing?
Both, yeah, both. So both, depth of coverage, thoroughness, and also style too. Although I'll admit that I have not, I've been happy with its output for the most part. So I haven't really tried to make it do an exact different type of style. I usually, when I'm using Claude, I'm using it for writing really long form articles. And so I will use it. I don't worry about it being like funny or witty or anything like that, because I'm not really concerned about it, trying to mimic that type of style.
Okay. Someone in your network who has impacted you recently?
So I'm going to mention Carl Hughes. Carl Hughes of the Podcast Consultant. Great guy, another EO member based in Chicago. Got to know him last year. Really excited to get to know him even further in the months ahead. He's someone that has built a couple of different businesses in different spaces, and is just kind of an interesting guy, very positive type of person. And so, yeah, I think I'd mention Carl. A good person to know.
Okay, awesome. So an issue in your industry. Today we're going to talk about promoting a podcast. There's so many podcasts out there, so promotion may look different, or their goals may look different depending on the podcast and the person. Let's talk about channels that move the needle early in terms of putting your podcast out there.
Yeah, so I get this question a lot. How do I promote my podcast? And I think of it in different ways. I think of it in terms of like what you should do before you launch a podcast, what you should do once you've launched a podcast, different ways that you can think about positioning your podcast so that it's set up in the right way in order to make it easier for you to promote it. So there's kind of a number of different pieces that I would think about there. Before you even launch a podcast, if you're doing this for a business, a B2B business, which is what we focus on, a lot of times people honestly over optimize around promotion. They worry too much about it. And a lot of times it's paralysis analysis. They spend all day worrying about that thing instead of just putting one foot in front of the other and just finding 10 clients of yours and going and interviewing them, having a great conversation with them, and creating a podcast around that. So I think that that is I wouldn't worry too much about it beforehand. The best thing to do is to get to launch your podcast. And then after you've done that, then you can worry about, promoting it some more and some different strategies that work with that. But let's also talk for a moment about positioning around the podcast. So oftentimes people position the podcast too narrowly. Jeremy's a classic example. When he started his podcast, he was really fascinated with productivity and thought, I'm going to start a podcast about productivity. And he did 10 episodes and then he was bored with it. And so fortunately, he called it Inspired Insider. He hadn't called it, the Productivity Ninja or something like that. And you have to reposition the whole show, right? So a lot of times people, I think they make things too narrow. Now, if you are all about, let's say you serve architects and engineers, that's all you've ever done, that's all you want to do, then it's okay to position it in that framing. But if you are like many businesses, which is that you kind of go with the flow, you have different types of clients, then you might not want to frame it too narrowly, because that might create problems for you if you need to reposition it at some point in the future. But if you do frame it like just around like that one thing that you're focused on, that one vertical, then it can help with promotion, because other podcasts, other industry events, other conferences will know who you are and know that they are clearly for you. You are clearly for them. It's a good match. And so that can lead to better strategic partnerships in the future.
Um, a potential way to grow your podcast would be through guest-driven growth. How do you kind of choose guests strategically to accelerate distribution, and not just content quality?
Well, so first of all, so a lot of people think that, oh, if I just get the biggest guest possible, then that will
Mhm.
help grow my podcast. And I haven't found that to be the case. I've had lots of really big name podcast guests. And, it's not like they're going to tweet it out and then all of a sudden you're going to get tons and tons of downloads. In fact, I haven't found that to be the case at all. Um, so I wouldn't worry too much about that piece of it. Now, what can be really good is focusing on the same medium. So going and being a guest on other podcasts can be a great one. So using your podcast to invite other podcasters whose shows you'd like to be on onto your show, then have a conversation around, hey, I'd love to come onto your show as well. I have these topics that I can talk about. I've noticed that you haven't covered them in depth in a recent episode. I'd love to come on and talk about that. So having them onto your show, then having them reciprocate, have you go on their show, it's a win-win all around. You're promoting their show, they're promoting your show, and it's native to the technology, to the same platform that people want. Because people who listen to podcasts like to listen to podcasts. People who are on X, they want to follow other people on X. People who are on TikTok, they want to stay on TikTok. So it's harder to get people from one platform to another platform. So, you could have the world's biggest TikTok star in the world, and you could go and they could have you on their TikTok channel, but that's not necessarily going to materialize in the form of podcast listeners. So you want to stay with the same medium because the listeners tend to consume on the same medium.
Okay, good stuff. What about maybe like partnerships and cross promotion?
Oh, love this.
Are there
Yeah,
good early partnership models? How do you approach communities? Things like that.
yeah, I love this. Yeah, I love this. So I try to approach it from a perspective of how can I deliver value to this community. So let's go back to the architects and engineer model again. So if you serve architects and engineers, I'm sure you know that there are conferences, there are events, there are membership organizations, there are associations that serve that community. And so there's a lot of ways that you can use the podcast to have some kind of strategic partnership with them, from as simple as, the industry association has an upcoming conference. And so we're going to promote that to, maybe when it gets more advanced, they invite you down and you record an episode live at their show. And boom, you've got an audience of 300, 1,000 people, whatever it is in the audience that are sitting there that are learning about your show. So look for other players in the industry that you want to be known in, that you want to focus in, that have listeners, that have people that are potential clients or referral partners, and then look for ways in which you can collaborate with them.
And then maybe people think, okay, I need to increase my listenership. I'm just going to run ads. What do you think about that and paid promotion?
Yeah, I think sometimes people think that this is going to be an easy button solution, and there are ways that you can do that, but I would not do this early on. I would wait for a little while because this probably isn't going to be the best solution. You have to optimize for other things. Like if you get a bunch of eyeballs, you get a bunch of people listening to your show, but you don't do a good job in the program, in the show, of explaining who you are, what you do, what your website is, which a lot of people honestly don't do a good job of this. But if you don't explain those things, then you're unlikely to get those people who may show up and listen to a portion of your episode, but you're unlikely to get those people following through, connecting with you, or reaching out to you about, your services that your company provides. So you have to make sure that you have got those pieces in place first before you go and run ads, or else it's just a vanity play. You'll get downloads, but you'll be frustrated after a few months.
So you are in the podcast industry. You've had a podcast for probably over a decade, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
During that time, how high of a priority is promotion for you personally?
That's a great question. So it's a priority, but I'm not actively involved in it. If I was, I wouldn't do it, because if I had to, after every episode goes live, go and put it on Twitter and put it on Facebook, or, create little video snippets, short little videos, and upload them to LinkedIn, I would get very frustrated very fast. In fact, that was the problem, is that in the early days, I didn't do any of that stuff because I didn't like doing those things. So now, obviously, we have a company that does those things, put those pieces in place for us. So I still do a lot of that promotion. If someone looks on my LinkedIn, they see all these video snippets, but I focus on the conversation, which is what I enjoy. I enjoy doing that part. So,
So when do you see like maybe the measurables in terms of the promotion? So even though you're not an active part of it, how bothered or overjoyed are you by, whether it's highly listened to or not?
I don't even check my download numbers. I say to people all the time that I would do it even if no one was listening, because I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy the ability to have an author of a book that I read that I admired come on my show, or a friend who wrote a book or is launching a new business, and I can help them in some way by having them on the show. So I really value those pieces of it. And I know also that people get frustrated because, no matter how many downloads you get, it's not enough, and even if you get a ton of downloads, oftentimes it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a ton of revenue. In fact, I just talked to someone a couple of weeks ago that had somehow gotten 150,000 subscribers or something like that on YouTube, which is a phenomenal number, but was making single digit thousands of dollars per year on the podcast. So it was just paltry. And that's why we were talking, because he was frustrated with that. So I don't worry about optimizing for getting 150,000 YouTube subscribers. If at some point I do, that's great. I'll be happy with that. But it's not the thing that I'm really focused on.
Okay, great stuff. Hey, always great to talk to you, John. Thanks so much.
Great chat. Thank you so much.
So long, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.